I was one of the youngest boys, and so I was probably pampered, and I always seemed like I was always having a good time. And when it wasn't with my family, it was with some of the relatives or some of the neighbors or somebody.
My mother died, very young. She was 39 and I was only 10. She was a kind person, and she gentle. I would describe her as being very gentle, and she was gentle with us. And even though we had, and of course it was Daddy that, mostly required us to do a lot of things to help out. And there were times when other people would have to come in and help take care of us kids.
I, of course, worked for the telephone company. I was a lineman, and my cousin Joe and Bud Bieber and a few of them all worked for the telephone company. And of course, as I'd spend time at Joe's, Aunt Mary's house, she was always just like my mother. She'd always have, everybody was always in the kitchen, seemed like. And she's always had coffee, she always had cakes, pies, biscuits, or anything. And we was always there having a good time. And when we'd be, wanting to go someplace that didn't cost anything, we'd always go to Aunt Mary's. And so I'd get away with more at Aunt Mary's than I could at home. So I always favored Aunt Mary's place. So anyway, that's when I first met Mary Kramer. And she wasn't, I'd say she's a plain type girl. She didn't make herself noticed. But I was always looking for hidden treasures.
Well, I worked at the telephone company in Elwood, Indiana Bell. I was a telephone operator. And I knew his cousin, Joy Stone. Mm-hmm. And her and I sort of chummed around together. And I went to stay all night at her house one night. And she said, and of course, Jerome, Romy, was always there, because he was her brother Joe was his cousin, but a best friend too. And so he was sitting in the kitchen at his Aunt Mary Stone's, having coffee, I guess, and he was looking at a Sears and Roebuck catalog. And he said, he pointed to this, he was the baby section, he pointed to this baby, and he says, Mary, this is our first meeting, this is the first time I met him. And he said, Mary, could you get me one of these? Pointing to that baby. And I was so embarrassed. I was pretty shy back then. And I was so embarrassed, I thought, oh, I just wanted to crawl under the table.
She attracted me for just being quiet and calm, and she never flaunted her beauty like I always flaunted my good looks, but I didn't want anybody like me.
It seemed to me like we saw each other quite a bit without dating at Joyce's house, and then I don't know how it was that he actually asked me for a date. And we went out, and of course he usually always had to borrow his brother's car. Any car that he had didn't amount to anything. And wouldn't hardly get you very far, so he'd always ask his brothers for a car. And we dated, we actually double dated because Joyce was going with another friend of his, Bud Bieber. And so we double dated. And we go to the what's it called, the root beer stand, and we just drive around, I think, mostly, and then occasionally why he would ask me to go with him to a movie. And he had another little thing there that at the time I never, it didn't bother me, but I thought about it so many times, we'd get up to the we're going to go to a movie, and we get up to get the tickets, and he said, oh, I don't have any money. Doesn't that sound familiar now? And I paid for our way into the movie. And we did. You don't remember that? Yes, you do.
After being in the Navy and coming out and working as a lineman, and I'd say just wearing myself completely out with life and trying not to miss anything, and just was on the go all the time. I probably felt at ease. I felt like maybe the song, A Paper Doll. I like to have a paper doll I could call my own, and nobody else is going to come around with those flirty eyes and all that sort of stuff and steal her away. I didn't have to. I felt like she was the type of person that I didn't have to watch and put a lock on her or anything.
Then we dated probably for about 6 months, and I was living at Aunt Pauline and Uncle Albert's at the time, because when I worked in town, back then we didn't drive to town to work, and he started coming down there, and he'd get off work and sometimes just come down to Aunt Pauline's and lay on the couch because he was tired. He'd worked outside, it was cold during the day, and when he got inside, that he was pretty warm, or it was pretty warm, and he would fall asleep, and I would be embroidering. I always did some kind of needlework, and I would do embroidering. And of course, Aunt Pauline and Uncle Albert, well, maybe not Uncle Albert so much, but Aunt Pauline and Kath Ann would be sitting right there. That was, I guess I didn't really consider that much of a date. He just came in, and he would sleep because he was tired, and then pretty soon he'd get up and go home.
Now, she used to stick the needle into me and wake me. I know that, when she was sewing. Because I couldn't sit still over how long?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
But it was Christmas 1948. Yeah, Christmas 1948. And he came down for Christmas with us, and he had a negligee outfit for me and a diamond ring. And then we got married the following June.
But I was awake. I generally slept down there. She was right about that. And, but anyway, I thought I was a little bit leery. I think I did it in front of them because I knew how polite Mary was. And that's probably the reason I did it in front of somebody.
You afraid I'd say no?
Well, I think you'd kind of hinted about that if I didn't straighten up or something. But, no, you just stuck the needle into me, didn't you?
I think maybe you had it wrapped in that negligee box.
You had to find it.
And then he just came over and put it on my finger. I don't believe he even said, will you marry me? I think he just expected me to. And I was thrilled to death. Well, yeah, wasn't it?
You haven't made up your mind yet, remember? Just because you accept the ring, I don't know if you're going to...
Well, I just figured when I got a ring, then I was going to get married.
Joe was my best man. My sister Charlene was a bridesmaid, and we just had a parsonage.
It's a beautiful sunny day. And we went to we didn't have any fancy wedding, but it was fancy enough for me.
Grace Methodist Grace Methodist parsonage, and I think they just the minister and his wife, and that was it. Then we came back. My mother had a cake and some things for us and a few guests in. That was the wedding. But I think we were probably more or less interested in having some place to live, and be off to ourselves more than just having I don't even think we even thought about a fancy wedding.
We were more interested in saving our money. I saved my money, and to buy a house trailer. They called them house cars back then, because we pull it behind the car, And we went to Indianapolis, and I just thought that was, back then I just thought that was something to be able to go to Indianapolis. And we looked, and we looked, and we looked, and we couldn't decide what we wanted. We ended up then buying one. This was 2 weeks before we got married. And, because he wanted to be sure and have it all ready when we got married. And we ended up buying it 10 miles from Elwood after going all to Indianapolis. But I thought that was a thrill to go to Indianapolis. I had never been too far from home.
All I was thinking about was going to work and coming home and being with Mary and just being together. And everything revolved around just doing things to please her, and we were very fortunate we could go off and be like we were, and we were very independent. We had our own place, and I worked for a company that paid me for what I wanted to do, and so we really didn't think of planning a family, never even give it a thought. And then of course the situation, I think when people are married and they have this intruder coming up all of a sudden, things change, you know. And some people can handle it financially, some people can handle it other ways. It's you just gotta, you drop down from 50% for yourself to maybe 30 or 40%, and before long you keep having children, you don't have any time left for yourself that you can call your own. So, and that might be just as well.
By my mother being sick a lot, you know, when she had Danny, I was 7 years old, and I remember Daddy. She had him in the hospital. All the rest of us, well, no, she had Phyllis in the hospital too, but the rest of us were born at home. And I can remember the ambulance coming, bringing Mama and Danny home. And I was sitting in a little child's rocking chair, and he was born 5 days after my birthday. And my dad handed him to me and said, "Here, Mary's your birthday present." And Danny and I have been real close ever since. You know, I've always kind of protected him. So I always, and I took a lot of care of him. And of course, Mother died when he just turned 3, and he was still just a baby, you might say. So I felt like I had a lot of experience whenever I took Larry home from the hospital. I thought, oh, I know how to raise a baby, but it's not that easy.
I welcomed the fact that, but I never placed myself as trying to say, well, I want to be a good father, I want to do this. I never give it a thought at all, because everything just come, well, I'll think about it tomorrow, or everything will be all right, or just don't worry about it, or anything like it. And I never planned anything like that, and when they come, it was just something just naturally you did. I never had a problem with it. And I took time, and I think they call it, today they call it quality time. And I didn't even realize that. And anyway, and I sure didn't have to worry about playing golf.
Romy's mom and dad both were very good to me, and I just almost felt like I had another mother. His mother was really good to me, and just welcomed me in the family. And
didn't they like you better than they liked me? Wasn't that the idea?
I don't think that's exactly you.
I was always informed.
But she was a big help to me, and in a lot of ways, experience of motherhood. And there was many times whenever I'd have my babies, and I'd think, if I could only tell my mother, or if my mother knew. But I had her, and she was very good to me, and we had a good relationship. And especially Pop, he would always, because he would always take my side whenever anything Romy didn't want to give me, or didn't think that I needed anything and wanted me to, I don't know what he wanted me to do, but anyway, he thought I should do without, and that was fine with me because I had plenty of experience of doing without. We didn't have a whole lot when I was growing up. Didn't need a whole lot, I guess. I look back now and I think we had what we needed.
If I would fall in an outhouse, I'd come out smelling like a rose. That's what my brothers thought, and my sisters, because it's always been, I've always had the luck. I've always, everything come out great for me. I've always been babied. I've always had everything I wanted, and anything I touch turns to gold, and all kinds of rumors like that.
I felt something was taken away from me when I was a child so young that it wasn't fair. But I also feel that through the years, I think I worked hard, and God allowed me to have other things that would brighten my life.
I like to play with the children, and I like to, anything they did, and I can remember sometimes when Mary would say something, and the discipline problems and stuff, I always wanted to run and hide. Is that true?
It's true. Still true.
I want to, because I didn't want discipline. I never did like the part that the children, I believed in having a good childhood, and I couldn't see anything really wrong they ever did much. I wanted everything to be happy-go-lucky type situation. And it was pretty well. And I think she kept a lot of things from me about things because I could sense a lot of times, but the whole thing of it was the family kind of sensed each other, and they kind of worked it out some way.
I felt proud to have him as my husband and a father of my children, because he's always been very good to us. He's made a good living. No, he's been always a good husband and good father.
Whenever I was in love and twittipated, and I suppose I'm still in love and twittipated, but whatever you want to interpret that. But anyway, she's never been a disappointment. I've never been unhappy. And of course I was accustomed to being happy. So I've never had any unpleasant surprises.
My family, my children, their spouses, and my grandchildren is really, I don't want to say the only important thing to me, but they are. They are my life, and I want to spend my rest of my life with them. If I don't want to be a burden to any of them, but I would like to, anything I want to do with them, I would like to do it because I want to do it. I don't ever want to, I'd like to be able to do a lot of things with them, and not, it doesn't have to be for me or for anyone else. It's just because this is what I want. They mean so much to me.
It seemed like we were always home. We were always home, and I think traveling would be great. I think this thing, just not to really see the rest of the country, the world, or anything, but just travel and go out and walk on the beach and look out over the ocean, and just for the moment, just think how fortunate and lucky you are, and how beautiful everything is. And, but if you got an ache and pain when you're old, hey, that's just, you're still alive. And so just take it a day at a time, and try to be home, and wherever your home's at, and be happy, and don't worry about, well, I'm so anxious that my grandchildren or my children are happy and all, that you're going to be a grumpy old man about it. Yeah. And do what you want to do when it comes. When you wake up in the morning, don't worry about it. Put one foot out in front of the other and have a good time about it. But don't hurt anybody else.
Well, I want to say to each one of them, Larry, Kathy, Karen, David, Steve, and Gary, I am so proud of all of you. I dearly love all of you, and Romy too. I dearly love him, and I feel like that we've had a good life, and no matter if there's been difference and stuff, I love all of you the same. And I don't think I can add to that. I think love says it all, and I'm proud of all of you.
Kathy had made this little plaque in one of her classes. She said, "Dad, you're my friend." So, being a friend is, being a person, a father, husband, and all this, it's you just have to be yourself. If people don't like you, that's just too bad.
I'm going to buy a paper doll that I can call my own. But all that other fellows cannot steal. And then the flirty, flirty guys with their flirty, flirty eyes will have to flirt with dollies that are real. When